Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Fitness Education Series produced by the Australian Fitness Academy. It's like progressive overload for your brain. I'm your host, Tom Rock, and today's episode we're going to talk about getting back into training after a break. I think it's a good time of year to potentially just run this podcast and give you all my thoughts on it, because it's sort of that time of year where we've sort of potentially come off. We've gone away on holiday or we've had a bit of a break. It's been a busy period, generally over the Christmas, New Year's period. And very easy to sort of have a bit of a break from training or be too busy to get that consistent training in that potentially you do throughout the year. So not a bad time because a lot of people are potentially getting back from holidays around this time and probably looking to start to get back into routine and start to get back into the training of things. But it's also going to relate to other scenarios, whether it's getting back into training after an injury, or you've just been super busy for 6 months and you've decided I've got to start getting fit again and trying to get back into whether it's building habits or getting back into the gym after a break of that sort of extended 6 month period. And it's going to relate to that a little bit too. And there's no real golden rules to getting back into training, and it will depend on how long you've had a break for, and potentially how long you've trained before that. So what's your training age like? Have you been training for years and just had a 2 week break, or did you train for 3 months and then have a 6 month break and now you're trying to get back into it again? So it can relate to different scenarios a little bit differently as well. But I think it won't be an overly long podcast, but I think the important thing to understand is that you want to ease back into your training. It can be very easy, and I definitely have done this in the past too, where you've had a bit of a break for 2 weeks and 2 or 3 weeks, and you just want to jump back in. You remember where you left off, and you're just like, oh, I've got to make up for the last 2 or 3 weeks that I haven't been training. I've got to get straight back into it, push really hard, and make up for all the time that I haven't been training. And that's definitely not the best way to approach a return into the gym, even if it's only after a 2 week break. You'd be surprised how much of a difference it can make. You definitely won't have lost all your strength or your fitness, but it will take a little while to sort of get used to it again, I guess. Not long, 2 or 3 weeks potentially, but ease back in. So do less sets, potentially do less exercises. If you're talking about running or cardiovascular training, swimming or something, do less kilometers, do it at an easier pace. So ease back into it. Write yourself a bit of a plan. I think programs are really important. I know I've talked a lot about programming in the past and how having a structured program is probably the best if you're looking to get results or get your clients results. Making sure you're on a structured program is going to make sure you're progressing and getting some progressive overload rather than just doing sort of random sessions here or there and not really tracking any sort of progression. But plan a bit of a return. So if you sort of knew where you're at, ease back into it and plan some lighter sessions going in, so you don't have to max out or hit complete failure on day one of your new program. Spend 2 weeks easing back into it. So set yourself tasks that you think are going to be relatively simple, and just build each week. So as an example, let's say before you went on break, you were bench pressing 80 kilos for 10 reps. If that was like a good session, 80 kilos for 10 reps, maybe 3 or 4 sets, whatever you're doing, when you come back after say 2 or 3 weeks and you're getting back into bench press as an exercise, start your first session, like it depends on your split and all sorts of stuff, but start your first session might only be 2 sets of bench press for 8 reps at 60 kilos. So that's a lot lighter than what I was doing previously, but it's still enough to sort of get me back into it, stimulate some growth. Again, if you feel good, go slightly heavier. You could still potentially do 75 kilos, but maybe just do 6 reps instead of pushing to potentially 8 or 10 reps, which you can probably get. But let your body get used to lifting again. It's going to sort of have to go through this period of getting used to adapting in the training again. So don't be afraid to ease into it. If you jump back in too eager, sometimes it's easy to do. If you jump back in too eager too early, you'll find your recovery is not as good. You will pull up sore the next day potentially, which is fine, but DOMS may affect our ability to do another session or to repeat the session in 2 days' time. So if I'm doing a full body program, I want to maybe train Monday, Wednesday, Friday. If I go flat out back day one on Monday and I'm still sore on Wednesday, it's going to mean I can't really do my session. And then if I miss my Wednesday session, I'll do my Friday session. I might go too hard then I'm sore again all weekend. I might miss my Monday and Wednesday. So instead of getting 6 sessions in the first 2 weeks to sort of get back into it, I might do 2 or 3 just based on how sore I pull up. So you really want to manage that first couple of weeks back into your training so you can maximize the time in the gym. So you don't want to be missing sessions because you pulled up sore or it's taking you longer to recover than you think. So that strength and that muscle hypertrophy and that fitness, whether it's cardiovascular, aerobic, anaerobic, will still be there. You won't have lost a lot of fitness in 2 or 3 weeks. Especially if you listen to my previous podcast about maintaining fitness over the holidays. Really good tips you can take on board to potentially not lose as much fitness if you do go away, or if you're on holiday, or if you are away from the gym for a little while. Some good tips to maintain as much as possible. But if you haven't done any of that, that's fine. Sometimes you just go away, forget about it, you leave it, and you just relax and enjoy yourself, and that's absolutely fine. But you come back after a 2 or 3 week break, ease back into it. You don't want to have that super muscle soreness and that impact of recovery on getting back in the gym and just practicing the movements again, getting used to it. And you'll find after 2 weeks, you're probably back pretty close to where you were if it was only a 2 week break. And you can just start sort of following a following a structured program, pushing some sets closer to failure depending on your goals, and really working through, getting into that consistent, slightly sort of more intense training than that first 2 week build-in where you're just getting the body used to it again. So that's probably my tips for sort of immediately getting back to train after sort of a short break. If you've taken a longer break, say you've had 6 months and you've been flat out at work, or you're quite busy and you just haven't really done much fitness or exercise in, say, 6 months, and you've sort of lost quite a bit of conditioning, the same principles apply. So you still want to take it very easy. If it's cardiovascular stuff, definitely you're going to see a reduction in your cardiovascular fitness over, say, a 6-month period or longer. So if I was running 5K at a time before I stopped training, when I come back, definitely starting out at 1 to 2 kilometers and just building up very slowly is important. So have a look. And again, that's why structured programs are really good, because if I've done a structured program in the past, I know how to apply a structured program in the future, and I can look at what my structured program was then and follow the similar structure, but maybe just reduce the kilometers or reduce the speed and sort of have that slow build up like I did before, but now I'm just starting at a lower base. Same thing with resistance training. Again, you're probably just starting it with a 2 week break. You might not need to reduce too much, and it might only take you 1 or 2 weeks before you get back to being able to push and lifting and training at a similar intensity that you were beforehand. If you've taken 6 months off or more, you've probably lost a little bit more fitness, strength, muscle mass, that sort of thing. So probably in this case, the hardest thing is lowering your expectations a little bit. You don't want to let it get demoralizing, and that's a really important thing. So if you're training a client who used to be really fit or used to be fitter, and they're like, I used to do this, and all they want to do is do that, it can be really hard to come back in the gym and not be able to do what you used to do. And that can be a problem with aging and in sports and everything. Sometimes you get to a point and you're just not as good as you used to be, and that can be hard to stomach, I guess. So coming in with lower expectations, there's no expectation that you need to do that, but take your time to potentially just improve from where you are. So again, find your baseline, take it easy to start with and see where you're at, and then build up slowly. I think you've got to get your client or yourself and look at the progressions and see them as good little wins. Doesn't matter if you used to bench press 100 kilos and now you can only bench press 60. 60 is where you're at. That's great. And let's get your client enjoying each little step and each progression. It's good working with these clients because if they've been to the gym previously and they sort of build a really good base early, they'll have that coordination of the exercise, and it will take them a lot less to sort of get through that beginner stage, if at any time at all, because they'll know what they're doing, they'll know how to perform each exercise, and they will have followed a program before and hopefully be able to commit to that sort of consistent work. And if they do that, they'll see those little progressions coming back. So I guess not having any expectations on yourself after a long break is important. You start at where you start at, and that's great. I think the main thing you want to focus on at that point is just being consistent. Don't get disheartened because you train for 2 weeks and you're like, oh, well, I used to do 100 kilos, now I can only do 60. Or I used to run 5K, now I can only run 3K. What's the point, sort of thing? Don't try not to get into that mindset. Focus on where you're at and enjoy getting the improvements, whether it's cardiovascular or strength, hypertrophy, weight loss, whatever it is. Wherever you're at, just work on being consistent and improving day by day or week by week. And focus on the improvements, not at trying to get to a goal that you're at maybe 6 months or 2 years ago. Just focus on what can I do each week to slowly improve. So bring it back to where you're at. Don't need to overly exert yourself to a point of massive fatigue where you can't back up sessions and you sort of grind yourself into a hole and just lose all motivation. Keep it fun, keep it enjoyable, and just work on being consistent to get back into it. And then you'll find after a consistent 2 or 3 months, you're starting to enjoy it. Things are coming back, fitness is coming back, strength is coming back, and you can really start to build your programming then. But yeah, I think that mindset is that different thing you'll have to come around if you've had a longer break or your clients have had a longer break. And it's definitely common to have clients come in and they want to work with you, get a program, get you to help them out after they've had a massive break from the gym or exercise. So yeah, trying to get their mindset about little wins and being consistent to start with. They don't need to push themselves to complete failure or exhaustion regularly. Get them enjoying training again. I think that's the important thing as well, as they start to enjoy training again and fit it into their daily routine or weekly routine and build that habit and build that consistency. Then they'll see those results come back and they'll get to where they want to be. Anyway, guys, I hope you got a bit out of that podcast. If you do have any questions on this, any thoughts on this topic, please send me an email at tom@afa.com.au. So always happy to discuss topics further. If you do have any questions or topics you want me to cover on the podcast, send them an email to tom@afa.com.au. We did run a question Q&A poll on Instagram the other week, so I am going through those. Thanks for all those people that responded and sent through answers. They'll definitely be coming out, so keep an eye out on the podcast over the next 2 or 3 weeks. I'll be looking to cover off those questions that you guys asked in that Q&A, so look forward to that one. All right, guys, but get in touch if you've got any further questions. Always happy to run an episode on whatever you guys want to hear me discuss. Have a great weekend, guys. I'll talk to you all soon.